Hey there, welcome to the Posit Data Science Hangout. I'm Libby Heron, and this is a recording of our weekly community call that happens every Thursday at 12 p.m. US Eastern Time. If you are not joining us live, you miss out on the amazing chat that's going on. So find the link in the description where you can add our call to your calendar and come hang out with the most supportive, friendly, and funny data community you'll ever experience. Can't wait to see you there. I would love to introduce you to our featured leader this week, Alexander Schacht, Senior Director at Cytel, but also the host of the Effective Statistician podcast. Alexander, welcome. We're so happy to have you. I would love it if you could introduce yourself, say a little bit about who you are and something you like to do for fun. I'll remind you about that.
Yeah. So Libby, thanks so much for having me here. I'm super excited to see so many people and even a couple of familiar faces. I'm a statistician by training, and have worked since 2002 actually in the pharmaceutical industry, both at various bigger companies as well as CROs. So these are the service providers for the pharmaceutical industry. I'm pretty passionate about being a statistician, and I also coded quite a lot in the past, but nowadays not so much anymore. There are just so many young people that can do it so much better than me. So what I love doing outside of work is actually skiing. Um, so I'm just back from a skiing vacation together with my three kids. And so that is something that I really do enjoy. I have a podcast that is, of course, free for you. It's over 450 episodes. And it's a lot about things that we can talk about today, like career advice, like how can you have an influence as a data scientist beyond just your technical skills. I'm very passionate about, us as data people to have more influence in our organizations, but also beyond. I think if, as a general kind of thing in society, we make better decisions on data, we'll be all better off. I personally am very passionate about data around patients and health. So that is my area where I focus. And here we also need to, convince people, stakeholders, to make a better decision on data. That can be kind of people that invest in these areas, like sponsors, but it can also be regulators. So, like in the US, it would be the FDA, or in Europe, the EMA, or it can be payers. Yeah, so insurance companies, or also national payers, like in Canada or in most of Europe, you would have national payers. And ultimately, all of us, yeah, most of us will sooner or later become a patient, or have a patient as a maybe as a child, or as a spouse, or as an old mother or father. And then you want to look into these data and actually be able to make sense of it, to decide whether a treatment is necessary or not. We have probably seen a lot about that during the COVID era, yeah, where everybody was talking about data and how to make sense of it. And that's where I'm really, really passionate, making sure that you have the right experiments, collect the data in the right way, and make meaningful conclusions out of it, yeah, so that everybody can understand it and not just us data people.
Wonderful. Thank you. We have so many people here who could benefit from talking about these career type questions. And at the Hangout, we often find ourselves talking about communication. And so I wanted to call Arsenis in, who I saw asked a great question in the Slido. Arsenis, would you like to ask your question live? And I'm going to copy it for everybody and stick it in the chat. And as a reminder, really quickly, sorry, Arsenis, you guys, I did the Slido link wrong. I'm so sorry. Rachel and Isabella have fixed it. So click the Slido link anew, and it should work. All right, take it away, Arsenis.
Cool. Thanks, Libby. And Alexander, thank you so much for joining us today and chatting with us a bit here. My question to you, so I looked at your profile a bit and I see that you've had this quite a career arc in that you kind of started out very technically and you moved into being CEO and now in this position where you're kind of talking to folks and in a way consulting on how best to bring ideas forward and things like that. So my question is, what are some of the tensions as you look back through your career that you've identified as most challenging between technical work and executive type work? And has your own career growth helped you in how you help others manage those tensions? You were just talking about communication, so I imagine so, but yeah.
So I think the biggest tension is kind of internally in us. Yeah. So we become data scientists because we're passionate about the technical aspects. Yeah. Whenever you go to a conference and says, lots of technical sessions, and there's maybe one session about communication, all the technical sessions are filled, and so on about communication, you see a couple of people. I think we need to embrace all the communication aspects, become better in communication, even if that is not our comfort zone. We need to step outside of this comfort zone and embrace these other things so that we can actually work better with the technical stuff. So you can have the best technical ideas. If you can't convince your non-technical, management, they will not fly. So, or if you are super technical, but nobody can, effectively work with you, you'll not be, effective. That's why I called it the effective statistician. Or my book is also called How to Be an Effective Statistician. You can think about it like in a car, your technical skills is your engine. That's all the power that you have. And your communication skills is everything around it, especially the wheels that bring it on, on the road. If you have a Porsche engine, but you have we have wheels like a bicycle, you'll not bring the power on the road. You can work on improving your technical skills so much, it will not help you move faster. And it would just be frustrating for you. Therefore, I think it's really, really important to work on these other skills. And I can tell you, as soon as I worked more on my communication skills, my influencing skills, my leadership skills, I was able to do much more fun things because I was also much more seen as a technical expert. My presentations, all the personal branding, all these things help so much in that regard.
I think that there's a question that follows on really nicely to this. And Arsenis, thank you so much for opening us up with that question. It's an anonymous one that says, do you have any advice for increasing that visibility and increasing that influence, specifically in environments where bias or prejudice exists?
Okay, so the first thing is you need for yourself to make a decision that you want to be more visible. And it takes courage to do so. Now, in order to have courage, you need to have a reason. Why do you want to be courageous? So for me, it's really important to understand, what do you want to personally achieve? So for me, is what I talked earlier about, is making the right decisions for patients based on data. It could be something completely different for you. most likely very different for you. But you need to know why you do these things, so that when, critique comes up, people kind of against you whatsoever, and you mentioned this kind of biased environment, when it's hard, you know why you're doing it. So that is the first thing. The second thing is start with first listening. If you want to build trust with people, if you want to become a better leader, actually at all levels, especially the higher levels, start with working on your listening skills. Listen, not like, and listening is kind of, there's a big spectrum. There's this kind of listening like you're playing on your smartphone, and there's a listening where you're really, really listening. You're 100% with the other person. You don't multitask. Maybe you take notes, but you see the other person. You have full screen, or best is it's actually in person. And you really connect. You ask questions. You make follow-up questions. You have eye contact. All these different things. That will help you to build trust, and that will help you to make everything easier, because the key thing is building trust. Now, talking about visibility, there's of course visibility within your organization, but I think it's even easier to have visibility outside of your organization. And from a professional point of view, the number one place where you can build that is LinkedIn. So do two things. First, improve your LinkedIn profile. Make sure that it tells the story, that there's really something personal in it. Make sure that you know who you write that for. So that is a personal branding aspect. And the second thing is regularly contribute on LinkedIn. It's so easy. Pick a topic that you're passionate about, and then write about it at least once a week. At least once a week. And if you do that, you will increase your personal visibility. Now, advanced, go to conferences. Libby just mentioned the Deposit Conference. Attend that. Present there. Join communities where you present as well. That will help you a lot.
I love it. These are all fantastic points. Definitely post on LinkedIn. And it doesn't have to be a revelation. You can just share something that you learned recently, something that you're excited about. And I really encourage everybody to do that and keep going. You don't have to pretend you're an expert in anything.
By the way, Libby, one thing,
Mm-hmm.
just post about something that you wished you would have known 2 years earlier.
Yeah, be the person you needed a couple of years ago to be sharing things and being vulnerable or open. And Mike Smith had said in the chat, like, you're never a prophet in your own hometown. People external to your group or org probably see what you do more than those within your own line. And I have found that to be true, definitely. And Mike, you had asked a question in Slido, which I think is great. If you would like to unmute and ask that live, you could take us in a new direction.
Okay. Hi, Alexander. Nice to see you again.
Yes.
One thing I wanted to bring up is that a lot of what you've talked about in the podcast and in LinkedIn posts and various other places seems to me to be aimed at effectiveness and well-being for individual contributors, right? So I would say that was kind of a bottom-up approach. And that's fantastic. But have you had experience or have you been able to influence the top-down people? So that, because it seems to me that some of these niceties that you talk about, mental health, well-being, courage, trust, blah, blah, blah. All of that seems to me to be the first thing that gets ditched when there's pressure to deliver, right?
Okay, so I have actually trained people that own companies. I've trained all kind of different levels within companies. What you imply from your session is, or from a question, is that the more people go higher up, yeah, the more they turn away from these kind of different things to be effective. My understanding is exactly the opposite. So in order to be effective, you need to be more humble, be more courageous, be more listening, yeah, be more trust building. So the more higher up you're in the organization, the more exposed you are. And so everything you do will be critiqued by many more people. And then, despite that, doing the right things is even harder. So it takes more courage. The higher you are up in the organization, the more people distrust you. Yeah, I don't know why, but that's, across all the people that I talk to, the bigger your titles, the less trust you have. I think this is what you need to do in that cases, you need to walk your talk. What a lot of people forget is that communication, the most powerful way of sending information and communicate is acting, is doing, and not talking or presenting. Yeah. So how you behave and what you do when push comes to shove will show how much people will trust you. Yeah. So whether people will go the extra mile for you depends on how you treat them when it's hard. Yeah. When you as a leader then takes the easy way and fire 20% of your people, well, good luck with managing the rest of the 80. The rest 80%. Yeah.
All right, Mike, that was a fantastic question. Thank you so much. I would love to head over to Brajesh's question. And Brajesh, if you would like to ask this live, that would be amazing.
Hey, can you guys hear
There
me?
he is. Yep. Hey, Brajesh.
Hey, Alexander, sorry. So,
Alex is fine as well.
so here's one of the things that I've been grappling for a while. Like when people say ethics this, ethics that, ethics in AI, ethics in data science, and generally, so to speak, I don't know if we have defined ethics, so to speak, and it's supposed to be very black and white, ideally, but it's very nebulous, right? So as a statistician, when you look at the data, you can just look at, oh, 95% of the members or population do this. We're good. But then as a human being, when you look at the other 5% of the population, they're actual human lives that are affected because of some of the decisions that we make as upper management, right? How do you grapple that? How do you work on that as a statistician versus when you're in upper management and you have to actually take the decisions? How do you reconcile with some of the things? I'm curious to know your thought.
So, as a data scientist or a statistician, I think it's really, really important that you understand the context in which you're working and have good business understanding. For me, in the medical space, it means that you understand what are, for example, different side effects or what are consequences, what are outcomes, yeah, how important are certain outcomes versus other outcomes, so that you can actually make some kind of informed decision. in medicine, you have always, in a sense, ethical kind of problem. Yeah. And that is this typical benefit risk problem. Yeah. Some no treatment is actually safe. Yeah. There's always a risk with it. But we are willing to take the risk because we have also get a benefit from it. And that's the so-called benefit risk ratio. Now, how that, and you need to have a general understanding for how the benefit risk ratio is. And what is acceptable from the benefit risk ratio, so that you can make meaningful communication upwards. Yeah, it's the same with any kind of other intervention that you have. Yeah, who will benefit and who will take the risk? And here, as data scientists, we can kind of look into this and, for example, help and identify who are these high-risk people. Yeah, do they carry also most of the benefit, or it's actually the other way around? Do we have certain groups that carry most of the risk but get no benefit? So can we kind of exclude them from the intervention? Yeah. Now the interventions sometimes are not black and white. Yeah. So in medical treatment, it's, for example, you could have different doses of or different frequencies of application of a treatment. Can you do something similar? Yeah. All of that is based in domain knowledge that you need to have, and then you can actually discuss that with your management so that they can also make informed decisions.
Amazing. Brajesh, thank you so much for asking a wonderful question and sending us in a thoughtful direction. And Brajesh is also going to be a featured leader on the Hangout in 2 weeks. So I hope that you will come back and hang out with Brajesh and I and Rachel and Isabella as we chat a couple of weeks from now. Okay, let's head back over to the Slido here. And I would love to pull in an anonymous asker. Let's see if I can find that question. It says, I manage a small team. I have created a culture where people are free to speak up and question everything. The problem is that a lot of people's concerns are managed upwards towards me, and sometimes I can feel the weight of this on my shoulders. How can I constructively deal with this? What a wonderful question.
Okay, so I hope I get the question right.
Feel free to
that's a kind of
ask me to repeat it.
No, so from a feedback perspective. So everybody is encouraged to give feedback, yeah, and to raise concerns. Now, there's basically two things you can raise concern about. One is concerned about people, and one is concerned about things, yeah, like processes, whatsoever, yeah, documents. And raising concerns about, the latter is usually kind of the easy thing. Let's talk about raising concerns about people. So there's basically 3 forms of feedback, or 3 cultures. The first is, that's the worst one, no feedback whatsoever. Yeah, everything is kind of hidden somewhere and nobody really talks about it. Second is, there's feedback, but the feedback usually goes upwards. Yeah. So let's say Rachel is the team leader, and then Isabel has a concern about Libby and goes with that to Rachel. Yeah. That's kind of okay. Yeah. But what I would do as Rachel, I would ask Isabel, have you already talked with Libby about it? That is always the first thing. Yeah, people should talk to those people that they have some kind of problem with whatsoever directly. And now I give you the feedback formula that you can very, very easily use. It's 3 steps, super simple, and you can do it in 2 minutes. Yeah. The feedback formula is, first, you ask for approval. So Isabella goes to Libby and say, hey, Libby, do you have time for feedback? Libby says, yes. Could also say, no, can you come back, in half an hour because then I'm done with my code. Okay. Libby says, yes. Isabella now states from her perspective what she has seen in terms of an action, a behavior. Yeah. Libby, when you were 5 minutes late to the meeting, that's as objective as it can be. Yeah. Or you can always say kind of from my viewpoint. And then you say, what was the impact? That delayed kind of our meeting start, and we anyway had only 30 minutes. And so we needed to repeat a lot of things. And I saw that other people were annoyed. Okay, stop. That's it. These 3 steps. Approval, observation, impact. Now, the nice thing is you could do this feedback both for constructive and for supportive feedback. Yeah, so it can be something like what we just mentioned, the constructive feedback, but you can also do it all the time for supportive feedback. Like why that was a great presentation, or why the LinkedIn post was good, or why whatsoever. Yeah, that is really, really good feedback culture. And so if someone comes to you, you can train them on that feedback culture. I would probably first kind of introduce that feedback system to everybody. Now, there's one thing that I want to warn you about. If you look for feedback kind of help, there's very often people recommend a 4th step, and that's advice. Don't do that unless you're invited to. Yeah. So first, for positive feedback, you don't need to do it anyway. For constructive feedback, mostly the other person knows what to do anyway. And you, as a feedback provider, don't know what she or he can actually do best with it. And if you kind of impose your advice on the other person, yeah, that always ruins trust. Yeah. So don't, jump on the advice monster unless you ask. That's basically, by the
Unasked
way.
for feedback. Yeah. I really like that point. Unasked for feedback. I think everyone says feedback is a gift, but not when it's unsolicited.
That's why you ask for approval first.
Right. Yeah. It's all about consent. I shout out to Lauren's cat making my day right now. Lauren, you're gonna have to go share Nightmare in the Discord and in the pets channel some more because we need more Nightmare. Okay, anonymous asker, whoever you were who asked that question, it was wonderful. Thank you so much for asking it. And I would love to hop to Frank Kovacs. If you're available to ask your question live, I'm gonna put it highlighted in Slido so everybody can see it. It'll be at the top, and I'll also put it in the chat here. Let's see.
Yes, I am.
Hey,
Unfortunately, I'm at my mom's house helping her with something, so my camera is off because I'm in my PJs.
That's
But
okay.
yeah. So the question was, so I did come from a consulting background prior, and something that was known but no one really talked about a lot was there were stakeholders who saw data scientists as a very expensive way to prove what they wanted to prove. and they either didn't care what the answer, you're like, yeah. They either didn't care what the answer was or wanted us to come to a specific conclusion. What are some strategies that you use to either massage or manage their expectations, manage around them, or just in general, how to navigate that minefield of a situation?
So first is you need to establish trust. Yeah. So you need to make sure that they trust you, because if they don't trust you, nothing will change. In order to build that trust, you need to understand what they care about. Yeah, what are their goals? What are their pain points? What are their fears? What are their hopes? So do that. Trust is basically three things that you need to have. The first is, and that is probably the most important, is you need to show that you care for the other person. Yeah. The second is, so that's the care part. The second is you need to have, the other person needs to feel that you are competent. Yeah. So the other person, you can bring this across with your profile, with your, what you have done before, who you have helped before. And the last part is the character. And I think this is really here important. You need to basically come across as a trustworthy person that wants to do the right things. And I know kind of, interestingly, especially kind of in the academic research area, that is kind of very, very common. Exactly also what you described, that people want to, get the p-value they need so that they can publish it. You need to help them understand what are the costs, what are the risks, and these kind of different things. And that you are not policing them, but helping them. So in many pharma companies, the statisticians are, behave like the p-value police. Yeah. And that's not helpful. Yeah. That way you exclude yourself and you make yourself basically vulnerable for being outsourced. So much better is understanding what is the overall risk for making a wrong decision, and clearly kind of understanding this risk and communicating this risk. But this is not something that you can do, overnight. The whole kind of trust thing, as you know, trust takes time. Yeah. So I would not set my goals at, well, you will change the game within the next 2 weeks. Yeah. That takes a much kind of longer term effort.
I think
Thank you.
the themes of today are trust and risk and benefit. I feel like they've been a big part of each of these answers. And Frank, thank you so much for asking that great question. Let's hop over to Slido again to see what questions everybody is asking. And by the way, if you don't know, you can upvote questions in Slido and you can also add replies. So there are a couple of replies on our anonymous question here. So I will ask the question and kind of mention some replies. The question is, thoughts on the most valuable skill set to invest in this age where Gen AI can do so much? And one person said, asking good questions is one of the most important skills that they look for. And Edward said, learning how to integrate existing workflows with AI, general cloud architecting, and data engineering are great for 2026. So, Alexander, what are your thoughts on that? The most valuable skill sets to invest in this age where Gen AI can do everything, or at least it feels that way.
interestingly, just this morning, I watched a short clip of the CEO of NVIDIA. He was asked about kind of the smartest person he ever worked with or he works with or he knows. And he mentioned kind of, all the it was a little bit of an overstatement. I think that, all the coding skills, become a commodity. I'm not sure that's completely the right thing because first you really need to understand what is needed. Yeah. And we just talked about, benefit risk and ethical things and all these kind of different things. What you can't automate are all our human-to-human interactions. It's really, really difficult, yeah? Because our human-to-human interactions are built on trust. I mentioned that before, yeah? We trust other humans. Machines, here and there, but really when it's about our usual workplace, it's about human interactions. So learning how to interact with others is one of the foundational things. And asking good questions, yeah, is, I mentioned that earlier, is part of listening. Yeah? Listening is not, that you're just silent. Listening is also asking good questions. And you can only ask good questions, for example, if you have a good business understanding. Yeah. If you know, okay, if a set comes out, then I also need to ask for that one. AI doesn't come with trust, and AI doesn't come with good business understanding. And these things, I think, is really, really difficult to integrate.
Thank you so much for that amazing question, anonymous asker, and also for everybody who chimed in with their replies. I want to throw in my own thought here, which is that something I've seen in community building over many years is that trust is built in repeated interactions over time. I don't know if anybody has heard of the marble jar concept, but like you have this interaction with somebody and they have like an imaginary marble jar, right? And they do something that garners your trust and they kind of like get a marble, right? And over time, over interactions with these people, you kind of know who has a full marble jar and who doesn't, who has earned your trust. It's so hard to earn trust in just one interaction. It's like repeated measures over time. And if you do not talk with people and don't have conversations with them and invest time in speaking with other people, they can't ever really build up that trust with you, and you can't expect it to happen. All righty. Well, we have about 15 minutes left. Oh, did you want to add something?
Yeah, just one thing. The best tool for building trust are one-to-one meetings.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, one-to-one where you can listen a lot, so that's why every supervisor needs to have weekly one-to-ones with their direct reports. And if you don't have time for that, maybe you shouldn't be a supervisor.
Do things that feel like they can't scale, right? I hear that a lot. Oh, but we can't do that because that doesn't scale. And I'm like, scale to who? Like, why are you so concerned with having this one-to-many interaction with as many people as you can when you would have so much more impact if you had, if you concentrated on investing in these one-on-one interactions with people, or just small group interactions too, right? Easier said than done in a United States environment where we're a little bit more grindy. And I think that everybody in the comments and the chat has been recognizing that like there can be a really big cultural difference between the time invested in other places versus the US. So I think that's a whole other conversation, but it's a fantastic point to make. All right, let's head back over to Slido where I see that Lolu has asked a question. Lolu, would you like to unmute and ask your question live? I'm going to highlight it in the chat. Do I see Lolu? There you are. Hey.
Hey, Libby. I'm here. Why in 3D?
You are in 3D.
Yeah. Let me see the question in the chat. So I think
I'm going to put it there right now.
okay. Yeah,
There
so
you go.
thanks. So myself as a data scientist with a health background, I was wondering where people would acquire the niche technical skills for working in the CR, clinical research organizations, that would help them meet those role requirements without actually getting any experience in the industry. Because I always see, this Adam, CH, DCS. So where does someone go to get that knowledge itself?
Okay, so there's always the opportunity to be trained on the job. Some companies also offer programs to get up to speed. Yeah. So a friend of mine, Shafi Chowdhury, runs Shafi Consultancy, and he trains, good programmers basically from scratch. So they know all these kind of different things. Yeah. So look out for CROs that have this onboarding program so that you can, have all the technical skills that you need to be a programmer in the for a CRO.
All right,
Does that help?
wonderful.
Okay.
I think it does. Thank you, Lolu, for asking that fantastic question. And I'm going to hop over to an anonymous question, which I will also put in the chat here, which is, oh, I just lost it. Hold on. Hold on, everybody. Sometimes Slido moves around on me. There we go. I highlighted it. It's people often talk about what to look for in a prospective candidate, like a team player, a good fit. But I wonder what your advice would be to look for in a prospective employer or manager. I grappled with this question when I was interviewing for roles. And somebody had replied anonymously and said, you need to find someone that will advocate for you. So ask about progression, development, well being. It becomes really obvious who are the managers and employees who care about you. What would you say, Alexander?
Was it now from the candidate perspective or from the employer perspective?
This is from the candidate perspective. So when you are looking for a job, you are
Okay.
the prospective candidate. What should you be looking for in your prospective employer or manager? Which is tough because managers can change.
Yeah. I once heard the advice: find a good manager. Well, welcome to the pharma world. Your manager can change. By the time you have arrived, maybe you already have a new one. So, especially in Europe, and you have this 3 months notice period. But so I would agree that kind of asking for how do they make sure that you both contribute to the company's success as well as through your work to your personal development. I think good companies put the right people on the right spot by making sure that your personal development goals are aligned with your job opportunities. So, give you an example. Maybe you want to become much better in terms of presentations. Yeah. Do you get projects where you do that? Or maybe you want to learn some kind of advanced features in data visualization using R. Yeah. Will you put on projects where you can learn these and apply these? That I think is the most important thing. If you get the feeling that you are there just to kind of just to have a body in the seat, yeah, to get the work done, I probably wouldn't go there.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you so much, anonymous asker. for asking your question, unless it was the person in the chat who said that it was them. I can't tell because we had a few anonymous questions. I really love it. Okay. Andreas, I saw that you had asked a question, Andreas Handel. If you would like to ask that live, can help Andreas unmute, and I will also stick that in the chat right now.
Yeah, I think it's taking it a little bit in a different direction. But I saw on your LinkedIn profile that you had an interesting mix of being an employee and having your own companies. And especially since there seemed to be overlap that you're doing both at the same time. So I was just wondering, how do you juggle both at the same time, both in time and priority management, and how do you get your employers to actually let you do that? Because there's so many non-disclosure and non-compete agreements and all that stuff.
So I have set up my business in such a way that I can do a lot with minimal time investment. And that it aligns as much as possible with things that my employer actually stands for as well. So I started with my podcast while I was employed at Lilly, and they were very positive in terms of contributing to the community. The same was later true with UCB. Usually, if you are working on things and publishing on things that are more helping the community rather than kind of promoting or a specific product or service or things like that, I think most companies are usually kind of okay with that. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know, if you would be super active in your local church, nobody would say something about this. Yeah. So make sure that that works. The second thing is I delegated a lot of things. Yeah. So people will often ask me, how could I, run a weekly podcast while having a full-time job? Well, most of the work I delegated. I have a team that sits in the Philippines that does all the heavy lifting in terms of podcast production. And so that's that part. And then when I did all the leadership training, I set it up in such a way that it's also minimal effort or minimal time with maximum outcome. Yeah. Having this constraint of not so much time actually makes you innovative. Yeah, and helps you to say no. When I was full-time on myself, I actually did things that I shouldn't have done because I had too much time. Yeah, so less time is not necessarily a problem. Yeah, it can actually it actually is a very, very good filter for doing only the things that matter and applying the 20/80 rule.
The Pareto principle. All right. Thank you so much, Andreas, for your fantastic question. I think that we can fit in maybe one more. We've got about 5 minutes left. And there was an interesting anonymous question. It's also something that I have seen discussed just in general lately in some community forums. And the question is, have you experienced stakeholders trusting AI more than they trust experts? And if so, how do you deal with it? Uh-oh, Alexander's laughing.
Yeah, I have seen someone that is more from the commercial side using AI to kind of think about products that we should offer. Not understanding what we are really offering and what is actually in the AI output. It's a little bit similar to the question from Frank before. Yeah, you need to build trust with these kind of different people so that they understand what are the consequences and that they by themselves understand that maybe that was not a good idea. So telling them that was BS is probably not the right thing. Yeah. But more asking them about things and what do you mean by that? How will that kind of have an impact? Do you know what that means? It would mean kind of implementing these kind of different things. There's this risk. It takes that long. Yeah. So more, taking the person seriously. Yeah. Persons always act on their best interest and with their best tool and in what they think is the best thing for them. Yeah. So, and they have very, very different tools and views and opportunities than you. So don't just dismiss that. That is their reality. Yeah. And approach that with some grace and humbleness, and see the person, not what they have said. Yeah. I think this is really an important approach. And I know this is hard. I sometimes kind of bite into my desk as well. But yeah, you shouldn't see it. But but
I
it's
love that advice though, seeing the person for who they are and
yeah.
not just what they said at face value, is kind of a tenet of nonviolent communication as well. If anybody has read about nonviolent communication, um, I highly recommend it as a book because it can really help you to start filtering the things that people say. You sort of filter your emotional reactions out of them and understand them for what they are actually saying. This is what I hear this person saying. They are upset, they're anxious, they're whatever. I love it. All right, well, we have 3 minutes left. And in our 3 minutes, I wonder if I could ask Rachel to ask a question because she had mentioned an anonymous question in the chat, and it would be great
Yeah.
if she could read that one live.
Yeah, I saw an anonymous question that was speaking to me, but it said, as a manager, I find myself getting pulled into the day-to-day noise. How do you get a feeling for the discussions and meetings you need to go to versus the things that will work themselves out? And I think about this a lot when it's so easy to add somebody to a Zoom meeting. Like you would never go to all these meetings in person if you were meeting with these people in person, but you so quickly jump from meeting to meeting. So I was interested to hear your thoughts. And thank
Thank
you to
you.
whoever asked this.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Love it. Decline as many meetings as possible. Yeah, that's the short answer. People will figure things out themselves if you allow the things to do things out. Yeah, if you always come, with your suggestions, with your advice, with these kind of things, they will not learn to do it for themselves and will always rely on you. Yeah, so delegate, 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 delegate. Yeah, and you will, yeah, sometimes some things will go south. Yeah. And that is fine. Earlier in your career, you messed things up as well. Yeah. So let others make mistakes. Be there to help them. Yeah. And coach them, but let them do these things by themselves. Leaders speak last, said Nelson Mandela. Yeah. And I think, best is if leaders don't need to speak at all. Yeah. So get out of the weeds. When people will really need you, they will come to you. And even then, ask them what they have done, what they have thought. So ask good questions, but don't give advice. Yeah.
Fantastic. I love it. Well, we have reached the top of the hour, so we have to say goodbye. I don't want to. We could do another hour with you, Alexander, easily.
Feels like
Thankfully,
it.
Thankfully, if you would like to hear more of Alexander, he's got a podcast. So you can go listen to The Effective Statistician and get more Alexander in your life. You can follow him on LinkedIn. I know that Isabella has been sharing his links throughout the chat today. And you can save the chat if you would like. There's three dots at the top right of your chat. You can just click that, click save chat. This was such a wonderful time. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. I cannot wait to see you all next week as well. We are going to be joined by John Lynn, advisor of data science and AI at Oventive. John is fantastic. Can't wait to chat with him. And then in one more week, we'll be with Brajesh, who is here today asking his question live, and Brajesh joins all the time. I hope that everybody has a wonderful week. Alexander, thank you so much.
Thanks so much and wonderful questions. Absolutely amazing. Enjoyed it so much.
Absolutely. We couldn't get to them all as usual, but they were so, so fantastic. And keep showing up, keep asking questions. Have a good week, everybody. Goodbye.